and Travis Jones all inactive for the Ravens. Well, to find out even more about these guys coming back from injuries, when could they be back? Dr. Scott Adams joins us.
Injury Report is brought to you by Orthopedic Associates of Central Maryland. In pain? Contact the experts at Orthopedic Associates of Central Maryland at mdbonedocs.com. Care this good feels good to the bone. Injury Report.
Well, Doc, the names that stick out to me, Marcus Peters and J.K. Dobbins in particular, it's been over a year since they suffered their torn ACLs. I think a lot of people thought that they would be back by now, but they are inactive today. When could we see them?
Sure, great question. It really depends, I think, on two main factors. When you recover from one of these really bad knee injuries, you have to think of two things. There's the physical component, and that's a little bit easier to measure. That is looking at their range of motion, looking at their strength, looking at their balance, looking at some of the football-specific activities they need to do. Arguably, the harder thing to understand is more the mental side of it. It's one thing to tell these players, by all accounts, we think your knee is ready. It's another thing to feel comfortable going out there, and perhaps one of those two factors just isn't 100% yet, whether it's the physical side of it or if they just need a little bit more time in the practice setting and in the setting where they can control what's going to happen before they go out onto the field. But since it has been a year, at least from a physical standpoint, I feel like they should be pretty darn close. And so I'm hoping over the next week or two, both aspects are good enough that they feel comfortable getting out on the field.
Hey, Doc, the thing about that, Dobbins had the MCL too. So his was a lot worse than Gus Edwards. And the other thing is you hear so many stories, and I'll just use Saquon Barkley as an example. Like this year he's saying, I feel back to normal. And that's the thing that I'm nervous about with Dobbins and Edwards, and Barkley is 2 years removed, that these guys don't have their burst and explosiveness for this whole year.
And that, unfortunately, is a very real possibility. While we always say we're going to try to get someone back 100%, the real question is in the biology of whether they can get their explosiveness back, whether they get their speed back. And then, again, you can only do so much, and then it's a matter of just waiting for the biology to recover. And so you do wonder if they are going to be 100% even when they do go back. It's possible, so I don't want to sound pessimistic to Ravens fans, but it's also possible that there is a period where they don't look exactly the same, but hopefully with time they can get back there.
Ronnie Stanley tried to give it a go last year. He lasted one game, and he did not look good at all. Underwent another ankle surgery. Ravens activated him off PUP, and he just got back to practice on Monday. I try to read into that. If he stayed on PUP, he would miss the first 4 games. Him getting activated, should we feel optimistic that he's going to play in the first couple weeks?
Obviously more encouraging than if he had remained off the list, and so I feel like it is possible. These are bad injuries. Anyone that's injured a joint knows that you can deal with scar tissue, you can deal with stiffness, there can be pain if the weather's bad. There are a number of factors that play into this, but the fact that he made some progress by at least advancing some towards the idea of playing is encouraging. Time will be the judge as to whether that was more symbolic or actually true, but I feel like if they're progressing in the way he has, then I think, yeah, he can potentially get back and play. But it is a very tough injury to come back from.
The thing that he had 2, that was his 3rd surgery because he had 2 last year. Now, Doc, the thing that scares me about Ronnie Stanley is, number one, I don't know that his want to. I mean, you hear Dobbins talk about how I'll be back. We've never heard Ronnie say, I want to come back. And then when he practiced on Wednesday, I said, okay, we got to see, Thursday, because what they're going to do is, how's he feeling Thursday morning? And then he didn't practice Thursday, and I said, he's not gonna go.
Sure, and it's got to be frustrating. I mean, here's an athlete that's been at the top of his game for so long, and to have an injury that just continues to linger. I think, again, going back to the comment about the mental side of the ACL recovery, you just have to think that eventually starts to wear on you. and motivation probably becomes harder every season that you're still struggling with that injury.
He's Dr. Scott Adams, and unfortunately, there's a lot of storylines about Ravens players coming back from injury, and you are the guy that gives us the inside scoop on it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks, Doc.
Great. Thank you, guys.
See you next week, Scott.
All right, indeed.
Ravens, Jets, we're less than an hour and a half away from kickoff in the season opener. Lamar Jackson is the best quarterback in season opening game.